During the entire 7-day period, they did not withhold food or drink from him. But on the eve of Yom Kippur, toward nightfall, they did not let him eat much, because food induces sleep. So the government of the court put him in custody of the sages of the priesthood, who took him up to the Avtina's family's upper chamber, adored him, took their leave of him, and went their way. They said to him, "My lord Kohen Gadol, we are emissaries of the court, and you are our emissary and the emissary of the court. We adore you by him who domiciled his name in this house, that you will not change anything at all that we have told you." He would turn aside and weep, and they would turn aside and weep.
This is the problem.
He was a scholar.
Because in the time, especially, we're talking Hanukkah time, this is it's very relevant to the fact that when the Greeks were in power over Eretz Israel, the office of the Kohen Gadol was bought. So it wasn't necessarily the biggest tzaddik, and in fact, it sometimes wasn't even a Kohen who was the Kohen Gadol, because all he needed to do was have the money. If he could have the money, then the Greeks would install you as the Kohen Gadol. Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a big problem that they had at the time, and what they would and because they weren't necessarily from people who were buying this position.
Great.
So they were often tzedukkim who didn't hold by many of the halachas that we held, and that's why they would make him take an oath that he would do according to what they said, because they, like every year is a new Kohen Gadol, because they all die every Yom Kippur.
Every time they get in, right? I don't know how I can't imagine how they would think that they'd get away with it. And they see one after the other. I could never understand that.
Everyone thinks that they're the one who's special. Anyway, carry on.
It was a scholar who, if he was the scholar, he lectured, but if not, scholars would lecture before him. If he was accustomed to read scripture, he would read, but if not, they would read to him. And for what did they read to him? From Yoav, Ezra, and the Chronicles. Zechariah ben Kovultul says, many times I read before him from Daniel.
Yeah. Daniel is also pretty riveting. That's all of the Nevuahs, the 4 kingdoms and whatever. By the way, for your interest, those 4 kingdoms are alluded to in the Mao's Tzor. When you see Mao's, each stanza is a different galus. You want to go down? Okay, you can go down. You want to go crawling around? I think it's more or less safe down here. More or less.
That's what I usually say to my cats. You want to go down? You want to pull around? You want to?
Just that my daughter wasn't feeling well, and she stayed over at us last night, and yeah. Anyway, here he is.
Okay.
Vacation is namnem. What happens if the Kohen Gadol starts dozing off? So it snapped their fingers in front of his nose. Ishi Kohen Gadol, they say, please, honorable Kohen Gadol, stand up on the floor, and the floor was cold.
Cold, right?
He was barefoot, of course, and the floor was cold. And standing on a cold floor is very effective at waking a person up. I stopped short of telling him to do push-ups, but anyway, their job is to keep him from falling asleep, because that's because if he had to have a carry mission overnight, and we don't have a Kohen Gadol for Yom Kippur, so that's the importance of not allowing him to fall asleep. And they kept him busy until it came the time for the shchita of the morning tide. Mishna ches, b'chol yom tormin es hamizbeach b'kriyas hagever or samuch lo. Okay, so in general, during the rest of the year, they would take the trumas hadeshen. So that's, in other words, cleaning the ash off the mizbeach.
Right.
They would do it by, well, kriyas hagever is an ambiguous term. It could be from when the cock crows, or it could be from when the crier, a human being, remember Vinny Caruz, the guy with the loud voice.
Right.
So one way or another, it's very early. Close to it. They're not makpid on exactly. It's got to be before, after, whatever. It's in that sort of time. B'Yom Kippurim mechatzos, but on Yom Kippur they could start doing the Trumas edition even from midnight, because there's going to be a lot of preparation to do. Ubar Regalim me'ashmura harishona, and on Yom Tov they could do it from after the first third of the night. Why? Because lo haisa kriyas hagever magas ad shehaisa azara maleam Yisrael. Because by the time the time that dawn comes, by the time either you're saying the cock crows or the crier announces, hey, it's time to come to davening, the Jews are already all there.
No.
They're ready and enthusiastic, and if it's Yom Tov, they're bringing their own korbanos. If it's Yom Kippur, they want to get the front row seats. Yeah, you're enjoying this. Okay.
Did he say oi? He didn't say oi, did he?
Barishana, kol mi she'rotze litrom es hamizbeach torim. Now we take a little diversion over here, since we mentioned the Trumas edition. It used to be that whoever wanted to take the Trumas edition would come. They wouldn't do lots for it, because it was an early morning avoda, and some of the Kohanim would want to sleep in. So they would only want to do this with people who are actually up in time to do the Trumas edition. And if there are a few people who all want to do the Trumas edition, ratzin v'olin b'kevish, then it's a race. They would run and climb up the kevish. Kol hakodem es chaver ba'arba amos zacha. And if he got there 4 amos ahead of his friend, then he's the one who's zoche. But if it was closer than that, then he would stick up. Then he would say to the people who were there in time, pick up your fingers. Mahen motzien. So what would they pick up? Achas or shtaim. So you could either pick up 1 finger or 2 fingers if you have some sort of muscular issue that you couldn't pick up 1 finger by itself, and then you could pick up 2 fingers. Ve'en motzien agudal b'mikdash, but you're not allowed to lift up your thumb, because then you could sort of pick up your thumb and your pinky, and if you see that the coin, the mamuna is busy doing eeny meeny miny mo among all of the kohanim, and he realizes, and he counts ahead of time and sees that he can mess up the count by adding an extra thumb into and tricking him into counting it as 2. So that's why we say you're not allowed to use your thumb for the lots in the mikdash. Okay.
I was thinking, by the way, the people who died, all the Kohanim who died, and were pulled out by a rope and everything, it was just they died. It wasn't like some gruesome thing that took place, or it wasn't anything. Just that was it.
I'm not clear on the details, but I would imagine that it would be similar to, okay, not a gruesome thing, and it's not like the Sota.
That's what I was thinking.
Nadav and Avihu, they had a fire come down which consumed in the summers and left their bodies completely intact. Not that those people were as righteous as Nadav and Avihu.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, we are in Shkalim, and we have Vav Dalet. 13 tables were in the temple. 8 of marble tables were in the slaughter area, upon which they would rinse the entrails. Regarding sanctified objects, we ascend but do not descend. And 1 of gold on the inside of the temple, upon a bread lay continually. 13 collection chests were in the temple, upon which were inscribed respectively new shkalim, old shkalim, nest, and young pigeon burnt offerings, wood, and frankincense, gold for the utensils. The remaining 6 were used for various donative offerings. New shkalim was for the shkalim of each year, and old shkalim was for one who did not pay his half shekel last year and pays it this year. Nest refers to turtle doves, and young pigeon burnt offerings refers to young pigeons, and all are burnt offerings. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. But the other sages say nests were used by one required to bring 2 birds, one for a sin offering and one for a burnt offering. But young pigeons, burnt offerings, was for burnt offerings only. Above. One who says, I obligate myself to offer wood, but may not bring less than 2 blocks. If he says frankincense, he may not bring less than a fistful. If he says gold, he may not bring less than a gold dinner. What was done with the funds in the 6 chests designated for dinner offerings? They would buy burnt offerings, the meat for God, and the hides for the Kohanim. This exposition was expounded by Yehoda, the Kohen Gadol. It is a guilt offering, for he is guilty, a guilt offering to Hashem. This is the initial rule. Whatever comes because of sin or because of guilt shall be used to purchase burnt offerings, the meat for God and the hides for the Kohanim. Thus, the two verses are reconciled. It is a guilt offering for Hashem and a guilt offering for the Kohanim. And it also says the guilt offerings money and the sin offerings money shall not be brought to the temple of Hashem. They shall be for the Kohanim.
Okay. Pesachim Ebes.
The Pesach offering that one slaughtered for some other designation, or the Kohen received, transported, or through its blood for some other designation, or for its own designation, and then for some other designation, or for some other designation, and then for its own designation, is invalid. What is an example of for its own designation, and then for some other designation? For the designation of a Pesach offering first, and then for the designation of a peace offering. What is the example of for some other designation and then for its own designation? For the designation of a peace offering and then for the designation of a Pesach offering. If he slaughtered it, if he slaughtered it for other than those who can eat it, for other than its registrants, for uncircumcised or contaminated persons, it is invalid. If he slaughtered it for those who can eat it and for those who cannot eat it, for its registrants and for other than its registrants, for circumcised and uncircumcised persons, for contaminated and uncontaminated persons, it is valid. If he slaughtered it before noon, it's invalid because it was says in the afternoon. If he slaughtered it before the afternoon daily offering, it is invalid provided someone stirs its blood until the blood of the daily offering is thrown. Yet if it was thrown, it is valid. Okay. One who slaughters a Pesach offering with chametz in his possession is in violation of a negative commandment. Reb Yehuda says, also the daily offering. Reb Shimon says, if one slaughters a Pesach offering on the 14th under its own designation, he's liable. But if under some other designation, he is not liable. And for all other sacrifices, whether slaughtered for their own designation or under some other designation, he is exempt. And if one slaughters a Pesach during the festival under its own designation, he is exempt. Under some other designation, he is liable. And for all other sacrifices, whether slaughtered under their own designations or under some other designations, he is liable except for a sin offering, which is slaughtered under some other designation.
Sure. Okay, let's do a siyum.
Yeah.
Do a siyum anzraim.
Yeah. Okay, we have Seder Moed, Aleph.
Wait. Oh, yes. If you want to, we can do the first Shabbos, first Mishna in Shabbos.
Okay. The types of transfers on the Sabbath are two, which are in reality four within, and two, which are in reality four outside. How is this so? This poor man is standing outside and the householder inside. If the poor man extended his hand inside and placed an object into the householder's hand, if he took an object from it and brought that object out, the poor man is liable and the householder is exempt. If the householder extended his hand outside and placed an object into the poor man's hand, or if he took an object out of it and brought that object in, the householder is liable and the poor man is exempt. If the poor man extended his hand inside and the householder took an object from it or placed an object into it, and he, the poor man, brought that object out, both are exempt. If the householder extended his hand outside and the poor man took an object from it or placed an object into it and the householder brought that object in, both are exempt.
Okay, now let us do.
Was Shabbos supposed to come after something else or before something else?
No, so we went
Right,
okay. We're now doing the last two Mishnahs in Bikurim.
Right. Okay. How is he like both men and women? One incurs guilt for smiting him and cursing him as either men or women, and he who slaves him unwittingly must go into exile. If intentionally he is executed, as are men and women, and his mother brings on account of him a sacrifice, As for men and for women, he eats holy things in the provinces as men and women. He inherits all the heritage as do men and women. How is he like neither man or women? Teruma is not burnt because of the uncleanliness of his flocks, nor is he liable on account of entering the temple. Neither like men or like women, and unlike men or women, he is not sold as a Hebrew slave. And he is not valued either as a man or as a woman. And if a man said, "May I be a Nazarite if this one be neither a man or woman," he is a Nazarite. Rabbi Yossi says, "An Aphrodite is a creature of its own, and the Kakamas could not decide." I'm sorry.
Androgynous, yeah. Somebody's androgynous, yeah.
Yeah, because it has Aphrodite, creature of its own, and the sages could not decide if he was a man or a woman, but not so a Tumtum, who is sometimes a man and sometimes a woman.
Hadran
Okay.
Allah. Bikurim Hadran Allah. Seder's Ryan.
Okay.
Okay.
Double Yom.
If we can make it through it before this boy becomes too irritable to.
All right. Terol Yom Vav. Regarding a Tahoe person who was chewing some food and it fell upon his clothing and upon a loaf of truma, the loaf is tahor. If he was eating crushed olives or most moist dates, and for any truth whose pit he desired to suck, and it fell upon his clothing and upon a loaf of truma, the loaf is tameh. If he was eating dried olives or dried dates or any fruit whose pit he did not desire to suck, and he fell upon his clothing and upon a loaf of truma, the loaf is tahor. Both a tahor person and a tevel yom share these floors. Reb Meir says both these and those are tummy in the case of a tevel yom. For the beverages of a tummy person affect hexture, both when he is desirous of them and when he is not desirous of them. But the Chachamim say tevel yom is not considered a tummy person. Regarding produce of Maisa that was rendered susceptible to tumor by a beverage and it was touched by a tevel yom or by unclean hands, we separate tumor Maisas from it in Tahara, because Maisas Rishon is a shlishi and a shlishi is tahor in the case of chulin. A woman who is a tevel yom may need a dough when she separates challah and sets it aside and puts it in an Egyptian tray or a plank. And she brings the tray or plank close and orally designates the piece of dough as challah, because the dough is a shlishi and the shishi is tahor in the case of chulin. Regarding an eating bowl,
we're done there.
Okay.
Chrisos Gimel base.
Getting to the end. Hang in there. Okay. If he ate 2 portions of kalev in the lapse of awareness, he is liable to only 1 chatos. But if he ate kalev blood, leftover offerings, and pigel in 1 lapse of awareness, he is liable for each one. In this, many kinds are more stringent than 1 kind, but in the following, 1 kind is more stringent than many kinds. If he ate half of chazayas and ate half olives chazayas bulk, if they were of 1 kind, he is liable. Of 2 kinds, he's exempt. And how much time may it take for him to eat them? As if he would eat them as parched grains of corn. These are the words of Reb Meir. But the Chachamim say until it takes no more from the beginning to the end than it would take to eat a pera. If he ate tamei foodstuffs and drank tamei beverages, or if he drank a revius of wine and entered the temple and tarried in the consumption for as long as it takes to eat a paras, he is liable. The Eliezer says if he interrupted or has eluded it with the last bits of water, he's exempt. There's an instance of one who performs 1 act of eating and is liable for it to 4 katos and 1 asham. A tamei person who is a kalev, which was left over from consecrated food, and it was on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, 1 mayor says if it was the Sabbath and he carried it out in his mouth, he's additionally liable. They said to him, this is not in the same category.
All right. We want to do, we're playing the game over here where it's a single action that in 1 instant makes you thrive in as many things as possible. That's the game that we're playing over here. So adding in another thing that you're also carrying it out into the street, that's a separate action. Mm-hmm. So that's why you can't. That entry is disqualified. Okay. Finally, Baba Kama, hey Aleph.
If a bull gores a cow and its fetus is found at its side, it is not known whether it gave birth before it was gored or whether it gave birth after it was gored. The owner of the bull pays for half the damage done to the cow and 1/4 of the damage done to the young. Likewise, if a cow gores a bull and its young is found at its side, and it's not known whether it gored it before it gave birth or whether it gored it after it gave birth, the owner of the cow pays half the damages from the cow or a fourth of the damages from the young.
This
If
is
a
it.
potter, if a potter brings his pots into another
Wait a
yard,
second. I think just if I recall
it
correctly,
sounds wrong. It sounds wrong.
yeah, I think this is Sumchus. I think it's the opinion of Sumchus who's got this. Yes, that's right. I remembered correctly. The Gemara explains that this mission is according to Sumchus, who holds that mammon that's in doubt is needs to be split. But we hold the halacha is that motzi mechavero alav haraya. If you can't prove it without a doubt, then you get nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Potter.
Okay. Base. If a potter brings his pots into another's yard without permission and the other person's animal breaks them, he's exempt. If it is injured by them, the owner of the pots is liable. If he brings them in with permission, the owner of the yard is liable. If one brings his produce into another's yard without permission and the other person's animal eats them, he's exempt. If it is injured by them, the owner of the produce is liable. If he brings them with permission, the owner of the yard is liable. If one brings his bull into another's yard without permission and the other person's bull gores it or the other person's dog bites it, he's exempt. If it gores the other person's bull, the owner of the goring bull is liable. If it falls into his pit and makes its water foul, he is liable. If his father or his son was in it, it pays ransom. But if he brings it in with permission, the owner of the yard is liable. And Rebbe says, in no case is he liable unless he accepts his watch.
Okay. All right.
You made it.
You made it.
Have a good day.
And,
You going out for breakfast?
okay, let's go, Elchanan.
Take care. Have a good day, Sean. Enjoy.
Chodesh
Bye.
Tov, Hanukkah Sameach.